When I think of my life and I look back over my career in broadcasting, I feel I've been very fortunate to have a career where I've interviewed a lot of prominent people. But behind the scenes is my childhood and being at the hands of a very vicious and controlling, abusive teacher who was the principal of the school I attended in rural Ontario, which was in Orillia, Ontario. When I look back as being a young child living beside a school, I was looking at the children before I started and couldn't wait to get to school and meet some friends. But I dreaded the thought of attending grade 4. Grade 4, the second classroom, was 4 to 8 classes that were being instructed by Mrs. Fortier, who was really a tyrant with children. I had a father who was a factory worker, a mother who was an at-home mom, a brother who was 6 years older than me. So I felt that I was a bit isolated. It was really difficult being in a 2-room school with a learning disability, being a very small little girl, not having any kind of individual help, and my grades were not good. Back in the 50s and 60s, children were supposed to be seen but not heard. In that kind of environment, we wouldn't share with our parents. And what was going on at school was something that I hope no child today or since has ever experienced. Because at that time of corporal punishment, where you got the strap for anything, it could be anything small, I found out I had, much later, a learning disability, and I just wasn't functioning within the classroom of having 4 grades. I was just falling through the cracks, and I didn't know really how to handle it under this abuse, but somehow I encouraged my little self at the time. I encouraged myself that I'd get through this. One day I'd look back on it, I would be a success. I didn't know how that would happen. School let out at 3:45. I was still in class on a winter's night at 5 o'clock when my dad came home from his foundry job. He asked, "Where is Marlene?" My mother said, "Well, she's still at the school." My dad came over to the school, and I saw a shadow in the door, and it was him. He stepped into the room and he said, "I'm taking my daughter home and I don't want her kept after school to this time." I had another experience where I was at the blackboard. I was so intimidated and felt so unsure of myself. I didn't know what side was up. I had to go to the bathroom. I was too afraid to ask, and I just urinated right there over everyone's rubber boots that were at the front of the class. But I felt that I couldn't do anything else. I was so terrified of the teacher, much like other people. It wasn't just me. But it seemed that the ones that actually could finish their work without much help or got the 80s and the 90s, they were accepted. They were not on the firing line. Me, I was on the firing line. The cruelty didn't just extend to me in the classroom and other kids, but the depth of what she did has affected all her students that she had. My neighbor, Brian, was in this playground with his brother after school, playing with sticks. And the result was that Brian's eye was removed by one of the sticks. And she would not call the ambulance or call the hospital. He had to walk home by himself to his mother to get help. I saw her also with people that had to walk 2 or 3 miles to school without the right clothing. One family had about 10 kids. One little boy, Barry, he was frozen. He had no hat on, he had a very light coat, and she wouldn't even let him warm up. She was so cruel, he just had to join the rest of the class. My brother Ted, who's very artistic and is an artist, he was beaten because he was left-handed. And he tells me that the effect of that still bothers him today. Thank God, eventually this teacher left this school system. I really struggled with education. I didn't have the background to really be able to have success at school. I was asked to go into an occupational classroom. I didn't want to go into it, but I did. Fortunately, I encouraged myself. I knew I had skills, I knew I was intelligent, I knew I was smart. And I found my path through going to college as a mature student, learning what I needed in the trade of broadcasting and journalism, and was able to have a career. But looking back on it, I really am glad that somewhere within me, I had the encouragement to get through that. Now schools are children focused, educational focused on each need of the children. And I wish I had that opportunity, but looking back on it, I guess I wouldn't be the person that I am today without my experience. And I'm just happy to be here to talk about it. Things have changed, and thank God for that.